That hinge in your hand is caked with 6 coats of paint and barely swings anymore. You've picked at it with a screwdriver, thought about the hardware store, and figured it's probably not worth saving. Here's what nobody tells you. You don't scrape that off, and you don't buy a can of stripper. You boil it. Paint is a film glued to the metal, and hot water swells it loose. Paint and metal expand at different rates, and the bond just breaks. A rag finishes the job. A can of stripper runs $25. It's nasty stuff, and it can pit good metal. A wire wheel rounds off every crisp edge the foundry cut. A new hinge from the store won't even fit the mortise. This one's worn into the door. I'm Artie Sterling. 30 years of shop class, 10 years before that as a Finnish carpenter, and I've boiled more painted brass than I can count. Now, before anything goes on the stove, one thing has to be said plainly, because I'd rather bore you with a warning than let you find out the hard way. If your house was built before 1978, that paint might be lead paint, and you treat it that way until you know otherwise. A lead test swab costs a few dollars at the hardware store. Swipe it on the paint, and it tells you in seconds. If it tests positive, or you'd just rather not risk it, do this outdoors, or in a garage with the door wide open, never in the kitchen. Use a pot or a slow cooker that never touches food again after this. A thrift store will sell you one for $4, and that's cheap insurance against a mistake. Keep the water at a low simmer, not a hard boil. Don't let it run dry, and don't stand over it breathing the steam. Wear gloves. When you're done, the water and the sludge get disposed of the way your town handles lead paint waste, not down the kitchen sink. And nobody pregnant, and no kids, anywhere near the pot while it's working. If all of that sounds like more than you want to take on this weekend, that's a completely fair call. Go buy the new hinge. I'd rather you make that choice with your eyes open than skip a safety step because you were in a hurry. Once you've squared that away, here's the job itself. Take the hardware off the door. A screwdriver, 30 seconds, and a little paraffin or a squirt of penetrating oil if a screw's rusted in, and drop it in the pot with enough water to cover it and a squirt of dish soap. Bring it to that low simmer and leave it 2 or 3 hours, checking once an hour. You'll see the paint start lifting at the edges, going soft and wrinkled, like old wallpaper left out in the rain. When it looks like that, fish it out with tongs. It's hot. And go over it with a rag or an old toothbrush. The paint comes away in sheets, sometimes whole flakes the size of your thumbnail, and the rest scrubs off easy with the brush. Stubborn spots, usually down in a hinge knuckle or a screw hole, get another 20 minutes in the pot and a second pass. When it's clean, dunk it once more in plain hot water to rinse off the soap. Dry it immediately and completely. A towel, then 5 minutes in a warm oven or under a hairdryer, because bare steel starts flash rusting within the hour, and brass will spot if you leave water sitting in a corner of it. Don't set it down wet and wander off. Once it's bone dry, a light coat of oil, 3-in-1 or whatever's in the garage, keeps it that way and makes the screws go back in smooth. And here's the part that makes the whole job worth doing. Under that paint is very often solid brass or bronze, not the stamped tin they sell you now, and it's usually in better shape than anything on the shelf at the hardware store. Heavier in the hand, with a casting quality nobody bothers with anymore. A little polish, and it'll shine up like the day it was hung. More than that, it already fits. The screw holes, the mortise cut into the door edge, the exact reach of the latch, all of it was fitted to this hardware specifically, sometimes 100 years ago. A hinge or a latch you buy today is close, not exact, and you'll be filling old screw holes and fighting a mortise that's a 1/16 of an inch off. Do that across a dozen hinges and knobs at $10 apiece, and you've spent over $100 replacing something that came clean in a pot of water. Once you see paint that way, as a skin that heat and water can lift right off metal, you start noticing it everywhere in the house. Doorknobs, thick with paint from 40 years of repainting the trim around them, the rose and the shaft both caked solid. Window catches and sash locks, painted shut right along with the window itself, which is half the reason the window won't open. Cabinet latches and hinges in the kitchen, and drawer pulls on a dresser somebody updated with a paintbrush back in the 70s instead of taking 2 minutes to unscrew them first. Even a cast iron doorstop, a fireplace damper handle, or the brass corner guards on an old trunk. Same pot, same soap, same patience, every time, and every one of them is a piece you were about to replace for no reason. I had a boy one spring working on a screen door for his grandmother's porch. The hinges were painted shut solid, layered up thick from every summer somebody had repainted the trim and never bothered to pull them off first. You couldn't move them with a pry bar. He wanted to just buy new ones at the lumber yard, $12 for the pair, and call it done, which would have been a perfectly fine answer. But he'd mentioned the door had been on that porch since his grandfather built the place, so I told him to bring the hinges in Monday instead, and we'd find out what was really under there. We set an old crock-pot up outside behind the shop, because that's where a job like that belongs, filled it with water and a squirt of soap, and let it run all through his class. By the time the bell rang for the period, the paint had gone soft and was sliding off under a rag in long gray curls. Underneath was brass, dull and green in the corners, but solid, not a pit in it. He scrubbed it out himself with steel wool and a little polish until it came up warm and yellow, and put the hinges back on that same weekend. Told me later his grandmother didn't say a word about the paint being gone. She just stood there running her thumb over the hinge, back and forth, and smiled, because the door swung the way it had when she was a young woman on that porch. So why doesn't anybody tell you this? I don't think it's a conspiracy. Nobody's hiding a pot of hot water from you on purpose. It's simpler and sadder than that. There's no company selling you the crock pot you already own. There's a whole shelf of paint stripper at the hardware store, and every can on it has a marketing budget behind it, because buy the can is a thing you can print on a label. Nobody prints a label for use the pot in your cupboard and $2 of dish soap, so it fades out of a family the same way a lot of this knowledge did. A generation stopped standing at the workbench showing the next one. Nobody's hiding it from you. There was just never a dime in the saying of it. Now, the honest limits, because I'd rather you hear them from me than find out the hard way. This works on solid metal, brass, bronze, steel, cast iron. It is not for anything with plastic parts in it, like a lot of modern door closers, or a spring-loaded piece, like a screen door hinge. You won't get reset right once it comes apart in the pot. Lacquered brass, the kind with a clear coating meant to keep it from tarnishing, can cloud or peel in hot water, so test a hidden spot first if you're not sure whether it's lacquered. Anything chrome-plated or nickel-plated, leave it be entirely. The plating is thin, and boiling can lift it clean off, and there's no putting that back. Last thing, and I'll say it one more time because it's the one that matters most. Test old paint before you heat it. Do the work outdoors, or with the garage door open, and use a pot that's dedicated to this job for good, and never comes near food again. Go take a look at that hinge you've been meaning to replace. It might not need replacing at all. Just a few hours in hot water and a rag, and come down to the comments and tell me the oldest piece of hardware still working in your house. I read every one of them. Keep it simple, keep it cheap, and do it right the first time. The folks who built the furniture in this country knew that, and we're going to remember it together.